Leo Walmsley was Robin Hood Bay's very own homegrown author, setting many of his books there. He named this place Bramblewick, a place that is known worldwide by his many readers. This short video tour will take us around the village that is pretty much as it was over 100 years ago when he first began his writing career. It includes photos and personal archive video footage, some of it from the early 90s. We'll use this downloadable map to guide us around. Walmsley points of interest are marked in blue. Just 2 rules: heed the private signs and please don't look in the windows, unless it's a shop. Now let's get going down Bay Bank. As we go along, watch out for these stone columns for the communal taps. In the old days, cottages had no indoor plumbing, and the only running water was down the inside walls when it rained. Don't worry, I'm only joking. Turn left along the second street, which is the backs of the houses on Esplanade. These were the modern dwellings, built around 1884, probably to coincide with the arrival of the railway. The Esplanade was known locally as Sentry Box Row, because each house had its own slim toilet shed in the garden. Turn right, and at the end, if we look round to the right, we can see along Bloomswell. But we're going left, then right, and along the passage to the left and into the square. Hello. This house used to be the Mariner's Tavern. Now the thing about the houses in the square is that they bear plaques according to whichever insurance company the house was registered. Each company had its own fire engine, and if a house caught light and the premium hadn't been paid, then it was left to burn. And there's another plaque to be seen here. Yeah, John Wesley, the 18th century Methodist leader, preached here in, doesn't say when. Around to the right, we go down some shallow steps and we come to Cliff Street, to the end of Cliff Street. Once very busy because it led to the main street. That was until the 18th century when it fell into the sea. Down a bit further and to our left is Tommy Baxter Street, a place of significant interest to Walmsley aficionados. And here's why. In 1925, the Fylingdales group of artists was begun, and amongst its founder members were Leo's father Ulrich and also the well-known Scottish artist Ethel Walker. Wanting to split her time between Robin Hood's Bay and London, she converted some cottages on the end of Tommy Baxter Street, creating one 24-foot long room with a huge glass window with mouth-watering views of the bay. And it was here, in Whitegate Studio, that Leo Walmsley met one of Ethel Walker's models. She would become his second wife, Margaret, the one he called Dane in his later books. Dame Ethel, having been appointed to DBE in 1943, died in 1951, and some years later, during one of Robin Hood Bay's notorious cliff landslides, part of what had been Whitegate Studio fell into the sea. And here are some pictures of similar slippages at the village. Just worth mentioning that Tommy Baxter Street may be marked off as private. Going down further will take us through the openings and past the famous pointed house on Peacock Row. Then down we go onto Chapel Street and turn left. This is another one that has changed very little over the years, as we can see in this footage. On the left at the far end is the old chapel where Leo Walmsley went to school. In Foreigners, this is where he heard about the temperance movement and where he heard the lovely lady sing. He was rather taken with her. In those days there wouldn't be a floor, and from the balcony you'd be able to see right down into the chapel. Now downstairs at the back of the building is where the schoolroom was, and where he was taught by the infamous Slogger, who we believe is seen here. Now if we go around the corner and along the passageway, we'll come out on King Street. On the left is what remains of the school playground. There's a sea wall now, so there shouldn't be any more landslides. Right, turn to face downhill. In Foreigners, Leo called this Cliff Street. On the face of it, little appears to have changed, but some cottages have been lost, as can be seen here behind the houses on the left. Partway down on the right is the Dolphin pub, which Leo mentions, but in fact he's not referring to this one at all. But first, here is the house where Leo's father, the artist James Ulrich Walmsley, brought his young family from Bradford to live in 1894. This is a house that Leo describes in both of his books about his childhood reminiscences. This is the window where Ulrich displayed his paintings. And this commemorative plaque was placed here in 1968. Across the street, what can be seen here as the Men's Institute was the King's Head Temperance Hotel in Sound of the Sea, where the ancient order of shepherds had their annual feast. Taken from further down the street, here's a vintage shot from around the time of Leo's youth. It's Mr. Thompson's shop in all its glory. Notice how the original window has buckled over the years. Here's the pub across the alley from Mr. Thompson's shop, which in fact is, and was back then, the Bay Hotel, the one Leo called the Dolphin in Foreigners. It's from this alley that the young Leo got up to mischief with the barrel. This plaque can be seen on the wall of the Bay Hotel. We've all heard of the filmmaker J. Arthur Rank, whose Rank organisation produced such gems as Brief Encounter, Four Weddings and a Funeral, and not to mention the Carry On films, though being a strict Methodist I'm not certain Rank would have entirely approved. Well, in 1935 his first ever film was released. Most of it was filmed here in Robin Hood's Bay. It was called Turn of the Tide, and it was based on Leo Walmsley's book Three Fevers. Now then, how's that for bringing fame to Robin Hood's Bay? So yeah, forget Daniel Day-Lewis and Phantom Thread. Instead think Leo Walmsley and Phantom Lobster. Across the dock from the Bay Hotel is the old Coast Guard station. From 1912 this was being used as a university marine biology station, and is where Leo as a young man got a job as curator caretaker, which he writes about in So Many Loves. Many years afterwards, in 1965, this old building was replaced with a rather plain typical boxy structure of the architecturally challenged 1960s. Locally, it was known as the Carbuncle. Leo described this monstrosity as, and I quote, "the wickedest piece of vandalism ever perpetrated," unquote. And here, in the late 90s, I caught some footage of it being demolished to be replaced by a facsimile of the original 1800 structure, currently occupied by the National Trust. To its right along the street is what used to be the lifeboat house. Go past the lifeboat house and turn left to go up Tyson Steps, around the corner and up, until we turn left onto Littlewood Terrace. If we walk along this row of houses, the last but one is Waverley Cottage. It was here in the late 1920s where Leo was renting, where he developed his famous collapsible lobster pot, as told in both his autobiography and Phantom Lobster. And here is the very outhouse in which he struggled to construct his early prototype from a parrot cage he found in the midden, whose site was just beyond the row of cottages. This was the outhouse on a later visit. And the outhouse has since been rebuilt and there's nothing left of the original. If we make our way to this long flight of steps, and for this we may need to go back to the end of the street and turn along Sunnyside in order to reach them, we'll end up approximately where the gasworks was situated, as told in Sound of the Sea. From here, looking up towards the coast, it is said that the real Lunn family had their warehouse in this area, as described in Three Fevers, Phantom Lobster and Sally Lunn. We are at the end of Albion Road, an area that appears frequently in Sound of the Sea, and just down on the right, in recent times a fish and chip shop, was the bakehouse where families would take their Sunday lunches to be cooked. And opposite is what was Albion Hall, where the concert was held that would raise money for the Boer War soldiers who wouldn't be home for Christmas. Yes, it happened in this very building. It's only in recent years that it's been converted into holiday accommodation. In the 1990s it was home to a music in miniature display. Next to Albion Hall, now empty land, is where Neddy Peacock had his coal warehouse. If we go back to the dock and, so long as it's safe to do so, walk down the slipway. It can be slippery, so do be careful. And around to the right there's a narrow platform, along which can be found some of the gas retorts from the gasworks that Leo describes in Sound of the Sea. So when rebuilding this part of the coastline, possibly in the 19-teens or 20s, someone had a great idea of including some of Robin Hood's Bay's history that would otherwise have been lost forever. In his stories, Leo makes full use and effect of the landing, the line of wooden posts that mark the safe passage for boats across the rocky scars. The posts themselves are long gone, but their holes can still be seen in the scars when the tide is out. Some other spots you might visit include this row of houses on Fisherhead, where the real Henry Lunn lived, having moved here from Flamborough. He's mentioned in the 1911 census, but he doesn't give a house number. The bottom property, that's got a cross on top, was the village mortuary and now forms part of the Robin Hood's Bay Museum that includes some Walmsley displays. As you leave Robin Hood's Bay along New Road, watch out for the carving of a mouse on the gate of the old police station. It's the famous trademark of furniture maker Mousy Thompson of Kilburn, otherwise known as Mouseman. Go round the corner and from across Beck Bridge you'll see the Laurel Inn, where Leo called on his last ever visit to his native village in 1965. Going back up Baybank, having passed the last building on the right, is the spot where this photo was taken of Leo with some Belgian refugees at the beginning of the First World War. At the top is the Victoria Hotel, newly built in the 1890s, around the time of Leo's childhood, and this is where, according to his account of the making of Turn of the Tide in So Many Loves, he and the film's director hauled themselves away whilst unable to film due to atrocious weather conditions, and they discussed the film's plot. In the churchyard of St Stephen's on Thorpe Lane can be found the grave of Leo's mother, father and sister. And, close by, that of a certain Edward Peacock. You'll find them on the right behind the church. The old St Stephen's Church is about 1 mile outside Robin Hood's Bay on the B1447 to Raw, and this is where Reverend Cooper's grave can be found. He appears extensively in Sound of the Sea. And if you've not read the book, here's a spoiler alert. Leo's father actually got to paint the vicar's portrait, and here it is. When the blue plaque was placed on the Walmsley house in 1968, the local councillor who received it said he felt the people of Robin Hood's Bay would feel extremely proud to think Leo Walmsley had made fame for the village, the one he named Bramblewick, a name that visitors and readers worldwide have adopted as a very special place. Many of his books are still in print, to be found in bookshops and online, and the Walmsley Society website is an absolute mine of information and well worth a visit.